What up, noobs? In this video, we are going to be going through something that I think is pretty dope. Zapier's new agent creation beta. I love Zapier. I've run entire businesses through Zapier in the past, been a power user in the past. Once Make.com and N8N started getting really popular, I personally feel that Zapier kind of started taking a back seat. They were definitely behind the curve when it came to new automation workflows, utilizing large language models, and this seems to be their first step back really into being a major player. I think with this update, it's pretty safe to say that finding a spot in the market for Zapier is something that they have done very beginner friendly, especially when compared with other tools like N8N and their AI agents. So that is what we are going to be going through today. We're going to be hopping into Zapier and showing exactly how this thing works. By the end of the video, you should be able to configure for yourself a fully functional auto nurture agent directly in Zapier with the new Zap Agent beta. Another awesome piece is that it is free up until a certain amount of action, so you can get in there without having to pay and start messing around with it. Now, there's a few situations I think where you might want to use something like this Zapier agent instead of N8N. Number one, Zapier support, in my experience, is a lot better, especially if you're a beginner and you're running into roadblocks and you want someone that's going to help you through those roadblocks as quickly as possible. Zapier support, there is actually a live support, and in my experience, they get back to you with correct answers much more quickly. Number two, Zapier's agent creation is actually conversational, which we'll get to in a second. And in my opinion, it is a lot more intuitive. So if you're someone that's not incredibly technical, or you're technical, but sometimes you just want to get something done quickly, and you don't need to use the fanciest new tool in order to get it done, and you just want it to be easy. Zapier is very easy to set up these agents, which again, we will get to in just 1 second. Number three, what I have noticed is the Zapier agent using a basic GPT 4.0 model does the correct action with the agent more frequently than N8N does with 03 Mini, so far in my testing at least. And last but not least, it seems to be a lot easier to configure the memory or the knowledge that agent is going to be using. So that being said, let us get into it and I will start showing you exactly how this thing works. So let's pop in really quick. And this is the type of email sequence that I'm going to show you guys how to go out there and build. And so we get a lead that comes through off of a lead form in this example, gets automatically tagged as an inbound lead. From there, the AI agent goes out, references a Google Calendar, and finds some days that work for a intro discovery call and sends them over to the prospect. Once the prospect responds with some time that works for them or does not work for them, the agent goes back and actually books that meeting and replies back to the person with the confirmation and the Google link. Now, this was, like I said, incredibly easy to build. I'm talking about start to finish. This thing took me maybe 5 minutes. I had to poke around a little bit to see exactly how the Zapier UI functions and what options you have access to. But again, it took me about 5 minutes to set this thing up. Now, you could do something like this with N8N. So I have a similar system in N8N that I was using prior to this one. The issue that I had inside of N8N was that I found, depending on the model that I was using, the agent, and by the way, that was OpenAI models, the agent was having a pretty tough time determining which of these tools it should actually use, which variables need to actually be passed into those in order for them to work effectively, things of that nature, the more technical kind of nuanced details. Kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest, inside of N8N, whereas inside of Zapier, it automatically configured that stuff for me in a second. And so really quick before we hop in here, I'm just going to pop out and show you what this UI looks like. On this left-hand side, we have this option to create new agents. So if I was to click on this, they have some pre-configured ones. So for example, if I wanted a support agent, lead enrichment agent, sales prep, which would do research for you before a call, all of that type of stuff. They have some predefined ones, or you can just create something entirely from scratch. Now, once you click into this, you can have a basic chat with your agent. You can view past work that it has done. So if we were to go look at this one, for example, we can see exactly what it did. It received a new email, it went through, it did its analysis, and it gives you a chain of reasoning of what it's doing at each step, which again, I think is a lot more accessible than it is in N8N. When you're inside of N8N and you want to look at this stuff, you're having to go in, pop open JSON payloads, look at what was actually sent where and so on. Inside of here, it's a lot more intuitive, explaining what it is that it is doing at each step, the payloads it has, the instructions that it gave. Again, very, very, very simple. So let's go look at how we can configure this thing. So if we go in, first things first, inside of your agent, there can be several different behaviors, okay? Several different behaviors. The way that it works inside of Zapier is that they have this workflow, essentially. So this would be considered a workflow that the agent is kind of intelligently managing, okay? It's intelligently managing this thing. So there's a little bit of like a human defining what the behaviors and what the workflows should be. But again, depending on the use case that you have, this is perfectly fine. And in many cases is probably a better thing for you to do in keeping your separation of concerns and making debugging, for example, a lot easier. So if you want to configure specific data sources that this agent has access to, really easy. You just come over here, hit the plus symbol, and then you can connect any data source that you want to. So maybe you have data stored in a Zapier table, Notion, in your Jira somewhere, Google Docs, you want to upload a file, whatever it is, really easy to infuse some like retrieval augmented generation into your agent here. So that being said, let's hop in here and actually look at what this configuration looks like. So if I was to come in here, we have some pretty basic instructions. The first one is the trigger. For anybody that's used Zapier, this is what we know it to be, right? So we can say, when is this specific agent going to go and fire? What is the thing, the trigger that will trigger this workflow to start? So again, if we were inside of a thing like N8N, it could be something like this Gmail trigger node or a chat node or anything like that. Now, another big benefit that you're going to have over a tool like N8N is that you have a lot more stuff that's supported out of the gate, right? Zapier's been around for a long time. A ton of people are integrated into the Zapier ecosystem. And so if I wanted to come through here and change this trigger, I have a lot more options out of the gate, okay? So we got this Gmail trigger, and now we're going to give it the instructions. So step number 1, retrieve all contents of the labeled email using tool definition, right? Using this tool. And so what I've done here is I've just defined, hey, this is my email account, and then the tool is actually going to decide what the search string should be. So it says, let your agent generate a value for this field. Again, this is very similar to what you have inside of N8N, where you would have this expression where it knows to go out and like it can communicate with the AI to populate that. Doing a similar thing here in Zapier. Step number 2, understand and parse out the intent of the prospect's email to understand if we need to book a new calendar event / call or just engage in general communications with the prospect. Cool. Pick a tool from the following based on what we need to do. So if the prospect is first time they're reaching out to us, reference the Google Calendar and pick a few open slots within the next 5 days using this tool, right? So this tool is just a Google Calendar tool that's going to go out and do some work. If the prospect has just confirmed a time that would work for them, first confirm that the time is available, boom. If confirmed, book an event using this tool. So already this feels a lot more conversational. Again, whereas in N8N, we have these individual tool nodes, and then inside of this giant AI agent is where we need to come in and kind of configure all of the stuff that we want it to be doing. A little bit different inside of Zapier. In my opinion, it's a lot more directionally specific, where you're saying, hey, in these circumstances, these are exact situations where you should use specific tools. So again, it's not necessarily an autonomous agent that's going to go out and do everything you could ever imagine automatically, but for a basic use case of wanting to have an agent that can go out and do actions intelligently and make some decisions for itself, really, really, really good tool. So after it's done that, we want it to reply back appropriately to either confirm the event or time using the Gmail reply. And so it's going to go out, it's going to automatically find what the thread ID is for this conversation and generate an email body. From there, I tell it how I want it to respond. Okay. So that's the first piece. Now let's go out and actually show you what something like this would look like. All right, guys. So the way that this is set to configure right now is that I have a Gmail filter, really basic, that when a lead comes through with a specific subject line, new lead for automation, it tags it as an inbound lead label. Again, really pretty straightforward. Now, if we were to go over and look at this inside of Zapier, and we wanted to test what this behavior is going to look like if it were to run in real time, we say test behavior. And so we can see the full stream of thought of like what is happening with this. So we can see that the trigger was fired. It received that new email in the inbox. Okay. Then it went through just like we asked it to and pulled the full body of the email. Now it's sitting there and it's determining what the next step is that it's going to do. And it says it's going to check the calendar just like we asked it to for available calendar slots in the next 5 days. It's going to go out. It's going to reference my calendar that I have connected inside of Zapier. Once that is done, it's going to send an email to the prospect asking if any of these times actually work, right? So now it's actually saying, I'm going to send this personalized response to James offering available time slots for a call. And since we're in this test behavior function, we can see a preview of what this action would look like. So, hey, thanks for reaching out about front desk automation for your gym. I understand you've tried your own solutions but haven't been able to get them to work. Be happy to discuss how we can help. And then it gives them a few times that actually work. So for testing purposes, if we were to approve this thing, it's going to go out and is going to actually send that email response through to the prospect. So if we were to go back now into the prospect's email box, we can see the response. So let's say we were the prospect and hey, we could say Thursday, February 6th works well for me. Can you send over a calendar invite? Right. So now we send that thing out. And again, we can test this behavior again once this email has actually been sent out. And we'll be able to see how this would now respond to this completely different email. So now we can see it knows that, hey, they're already having a conversation with this person. They're referencing back to the calendar that we had to make sure that that time slot we had recommended is still available, that someone else didn't take it. It's now going through and creating that calendar event on the calendar, which is pretty awesome. It's going to be plugging in the person's email address and any other relevant information about this prospect into the calendar invite that gets sent out. Boom. So it went through, created the calendar event. If we were to pop over to the calendar that we have here, we can see that event was created right here. It's got a Google Meet event configured. It's got a little description. The prospect has been invited to the event. And if we go back in, again, since we're in preview mode, this is a follow-up email that it's going to send to the prospect saying, hey, we just booked that thing for you. Now if we were to pop back in here, we're going to see that we saw the automatic meeting invite come through. And now we see this last email come through just confirming the time. This is pretty awesome stuff. Again, if you're not like the most technical person, but even if you are and you just want another tool in the arsenal, something that is pretty easy to use, really straightforward, I find it like it feels a little bit less anxiety ridden, to be honest, than a tool like N8N. You got all these things flying around trying to connect nodes to nodes. It's cool. You can probably stretch and do a lot more advanced things inside of N8N. But to be honest, at the point where you're doing things that are super complex, there's a strong argument to be made that you should be building something out in like Python or building your own backend for it anyway, if you're trying to build something super, super like extensible and more advanced. So I think that this is an amazing tool. Again, beginner, advanced, doesn't really matter. Highly recommend you all go check it out. Leave some comments on the video if there's any sort of workflows that you would like to see me build out. But yeah, that's it for this video. See you in the next one.